It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Tim Kachuriak, founder and chief innovation and optimization officer for NextAfter, a fundraising research lab and consulting firm that works with businesses, nonprofits, and NGOs to help them grow their resource capacity. A nonprofit thought leader, Tim is the author of the book Optimize Your Fundraising, lead researcher and co-author of the Online Fundraising Scorecard, Why Should I Give to You, and the Midlevel Donor Crisis. Tim has trained organizations in fundraising optimization around the world and is a frequent speaker at international nonprofit conferences. He is also the co-founder and board member of the Human Coalition, a member of the board of directors of Open Doors USA, an advisory board member from the SMU Digital Accelerator, advisory board member for Kids Prosper Kids, and an advisory board member for the Blackbaud Institute for Philanthropic Impact. Tim lives in Proper, Texas with his wife, Rebecca, and their 4 children. Tim Kachuriak, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant. It's great to be here, bud.
Great to have you here. And, we're at 7-8 months going into this COVID experience, or COVIDian times, as I like to call it. And interestingly, as we were sharing prior to the podcast, we both have recently gone to Florida, you with a big group, I with a small group. And, it's kind of been very interesting to get back on planes and trains and automobiles again and traveling. How are you doing personally, professionally, and certainly with regards to your family during these times? And how has this pandemic impacted you?
Well, it's certainly been a different experience. I mean, I usually travel 3 to 4 times a month. And so that shut down the middle of March, and it's been interesting sleeping in my own bed, having a regular schedule. I mean, I've gotten out on the golf course a lot more than I have in recent years. So all in all, it's been, I think, a nice, honestly, a nice time with family.
Everybody stayed well and so forth. No major illnesses and so forth in the family.
Couple scares. We've gotten tested several times, but so far nobody infected.
Well, I'm actually in quarantine. As I just mentioned, I came back last night from down in the Panhandle, so I'm following the protocol, going to stick to myself for a couple of days, do a test, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday, and then hopefully be out in the world again. But, these are the times we're living in, and we've got to live by the rules.
That's right.
Well, Tim, we'd love to start the podcast and, just understanding a little bit about your background and just tell me a little bit about your early years, what you did growing up, where you grew up, and what your early family life was like.
Sure. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right.
So go Steelers, go Penguins, Pirates, not so much. But and I went to college in Pittsburgh at Robert Morris University, and I graduated right after 9/11, which is a horrible time to enter into the job force.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I worked at a country club all during high school and college. So I like to joke I had 432 aunts and uncles that were captains of industry. So
nice. Lots of good influences there.
Yeah. And actually, the guy who I desperately wanted to work in the field of advertising and marketing, and the guy who was the president of the country club was also the president of the second largest ad agency in Pittsburgh, Blattner Bruner.
Wow.
So I went and met with Joe and did my little dog and pony show. And he was like, clapping his hands and he's all excited. He's like, oh man, I'd love to hire you. But then he started to wring his hands and look down. He's like, but you just laid off 30 people yesterday.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
9/11 has hit our industry hard, our agency harder. Sorry, can't help you.
Yeah.
So my first 6 months out of college, it was kind of like this wandering in the wilderness phase, just trying to find somebody that would give me a shot. And then I ended up meeting a serial entrepreneur actually at a golf outing. And he had all these little businesses, and I did a couple little projects for him. And he's like, you know what, why don't you start your own business? I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. And he's like, well, I do. He's like, we've got an incubator on the second floor of our office building. I'll give you a desk. I'll introduce you to people. I'll be your partner, and the rest is up to you, kid. And so I'm like, well, man, I've got nothing to lose. I'm living in my parents' basement, right?
You're out of school.
I'm
Big
out of school.
investment made.
I've got no overhead. I've got no romantic interests. And so I was just like, yeah, might as well go for it. And so ended up doing that for about 5 years, started this little company called Ambience Interactive.
Yeah.
We started off doing, like most businesses, just kind of trying to figure out what we were. So we would do any sort of outsourced marketing project, and then gravitated more towards the digital side of things. And this was around the time, so this is like 2001, 2.
Right.
And a lot of the general market ad agencies didn't have in-house digital capabilities. So we became like this boutique and worked with a lot of the ad agencies in town. And it was great. And I loved it. I loved what I was doing. I wasn't really excited about the clients we were working with. Not that they were bad, but we had a lot of automotive dealerships and legal clients, and nothing wrong with lawyers and car dealers, but didn't really spin my wheels.
Right.
And so about 5 years into that, my church was doing a capital campaign. They were building a new worship center, and they hired these campaign consultants to come in and basically help them run this campaign.
Wow.
And so I said, well, I'll volunteer our agency to do all the marketing materials for that campaign. And it was the first time that I was doing something that I felt like God had wired me to do, but for a cause I cared deeply about. And once you get bit by that bug, it's hard to go back and make car dealership websites.
No, yeah, exactly. So early years, did you grow up in a church and faith-based home?
I did. I actually grew up and went to Catholic school until fourth grade. And then my parents basically went through the entire Reformation. Then we went to like a Lutheran church, and then a Presbyterian USA church. And then we went to a non-denominational church. So had a lot of different kinds of experiences, a lot of different things forming my theology. But always grew up in the church.
Yeah, active part of who you were. And that continued through both high school and college.
Indeed. Yeah, I got involved in some different kind of campus ministries. And, I also had my wayward days where I went and tried to see all that the world had to offer, and just found out that there was not a lot there.
Yes, as we well know. Mom and dad, believers as well, grew up in believing homes?
Yes. Yeah. And, my mom especially, we were, I was sharing with you before we went on that we had a family reunion this weekend. Yeah. My mom about a year and a half ago was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh my goodness.
And we brought in all her aunts and uncles this past week, or I'm sorry, all my aunts and uncles, all her brothers and sisters. Yeah. And we just had such a sweet time together. It was wonderful. And my mom was just like in her absolute glory. Wow. So, and my mom has just really been such like the anchor of our family in terms of our faith. I mean, she really, I would say that my dad wasn't really walking closely with the Lord until, probably about maybe 15 years or so ago. And my mom really just kind of like, brought him along, and she's just been like the rock of our family. So it was really cool to honor her this weekend and spend that time.
Awesome. A lot of brothers and sisters. How big's your family?
I've got one younger brother. Okay. He's about 2.5 years younger. And he's actually a missionary. So he's with Great Commission Alliance, and they do all kinds of leadership and discipleship work all over the world.
Yeah. Awesome. And mom, did she work outside the home?
She didn't when we were in high school. And then when we went away to college, she took a job as a flight attendant. And she did that, honestly, just to kind of help pay for our college and, got us back and forth.
I was going to say free flights.
Free flights, exactly right.
That's some advantages.
But yeah, she just did that. It was just that short period of time, probably about 6 years she did that, and that's it.
Awesome. And what about dad? What was his profession?
So my dad, he's an entrepreneur as well. So going back to my grandfather sold vacuum cleaners door to door for Electrolux.
Oh my gosh. That's
for
great.
40 years. And he was like the all-time like top salesman for Electrolux. And my dad went to work for him for a little while, and then he started a painting business, and then he went to work for a couple companies. And I always remember this. I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade, And he was like this VP of sales for some big, corporation. And that year, like watching the home videos from Christmas, we got like all these toys and stuff. And it was like the thing that you throw the ball at and it bounces back to you because like dad wasn't there to play catch. And I think he got kind of fed up with all that. And so he went back and started another business. And he did that up until, I guess last year when he shut down his business. But it was really neat growing up in that environment because he always had a business partner. And so when I started my company NextAfter, I was like, man, I like the idea of having a business partner, somebody to go through life with. And my dad's business partner became Uncle Gary to us. I mean, they would come over for holidays and Christmas, and we just kind of went through life together. I always thought that was pretty cool.
Were you a good student in school?
I was probably an average student.
The subjects you liked, right?
Well, see, the thing is, like, so I was probably an underachiever most of high school and then the first through I guess 2 years of college. But once I entered into my major, I realized that business was something I really enjoyed. And so, I ended up stopped buying the books and just like went to class and like really developed relationships with the professors and really learned from them. And, going to a business school like that was really what the exams came from, was from the lectures more than the books, the texts. Yeah. And so I ended up getting straight A's like the last couple of years because I really loved it.
Got into it. Yeah. And having an entrepreneurial dad, I'm sure you had a lot of entrepreneurial things that you did growing up. What were those kind of things that you did to make extra spending money, whether in high school or going into college?
Yeah, I was always I always had a job. So I got a job when I was 13 working at a country club. And as I mentioned, I did that for 9 years, all through high school, all through college. And it was
were you a caddy there, or did you
I started off as a bag boy.
Sure.
And then, you do the carts and pick up the balls on the range. And then I eventually actually dropped out of college for one semester and entered the professional golf training program and worked as an assistant golf pro for a couple of years.
Wow.
I thought I wanted to do that as a business. I just really loved hanging around the shop and kind of glad handling with all the members, and, it was kind of a fun gig. But I think what I really learned from that experience is just how to talk to people, right? So like you think about it, like the people that are members of country clubs, they kind of, they're successful people, obviously, and they can be intimidating. And I just learned to kind of be really relaxed around those kind of folks. And I think that that's honestly helped me in business.
Yeah. Well, back to your career. So Ambiance Interactive did that for about 5 years, and then did some ministry work. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Right. So after we did this capital campaign for our church, I just really fell in love with this idea of being able to use the gifts God has given me as a marketer, but use it for things that mattered. Right. And so a friend of mine had made a bold career move. So he was a financial planner, certified financial planner. He shut down his practice and he accepted the job as executive vice president for Coral Ridge Ministries down in South Florida.
Yeah.
And so, right around that time, I reached out to him and I said, hey, man, what's going on down there? He's like, you should come check it out. I just hired this guy. He's my new VP of Ops. He's a legit rocket scientist, MIT grad. His last job was working for DirecTV, sending satellites into space. He's like, I think you'd love this guy. So I left Pittsburgh on a snowy day. There was like 6 inches of snow on the ground. I get to Fort Lauderdale. And
no regrets on that.
Yeah,
move.
right. The ambient temperature is like 81 degrees. And my interview, quote unquote, was at this place called the Aruba Beach Cafe, which is like right on A1A, right on the sand. They have the sliding glass doors open. The waves are crashing onto the shore. The sea breeze is blowing through my hair. Yeah. The guy's like going bling, 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 playing the little things. I remember going back and calling my wife. I said, honey, I think that God is calling us.
Something's calling us down here.
But that was kind of like it was a wild experience. I mean, in a matter of 2 months, we sold our house, sold our business. My wife was 8 months pregnant with our second. We had a 16-month-old, and we left everything familiar and moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to work at Coral Ridge Ministries.
Now that takes faith. Huh?
It did. And it was really hard because it was hard on my family, right? So I had bought a house like 2 miles from my parents in the same township I grew up in. And I was just going to repeat the family pattern. Like nobody leaves Pittsburgh. But it was, I think it was hard for my family because, we were the first ones to have grandkids for them. And so like they had all these pictures in their head and, but God had a different plan. All of a sudden
you're 4 hours away. Yeah. Right.
And so, anyway, so I get to Fort Lauderdale. And the day I get there, the head of the ministry, Dr. Kennedy, who had been there for 35 years, had a heart attack.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
It's important for me to point out that the correlation is not causation, or at least I hope not, right? So, but he was hospitalized for about 9 months, and then he passed away. And we went as a ministry from being about a $36 million a year organization to 18 in 12 months. So it was like a downward spiral.
Yeah.
And everybody was trying to figure out, like, how do we do like ministry 2.0 in an era without the founder? And I got to be part of like the team that came up with like the new plan and the strategic initiatives. And we had this whole kind of new idea. And during that time, I was working with some of the fundraising folks, right? So like I kind of got this violent shove into fundraising. I was hired to do all the digital communications for the ministry, but then they said, whatever you're doing on the internet, you got to figure out how that stuff makes money because, we're dying. And that's when I really kind of discovered like fundraising. And we had this agency that we worked with, and I had no idea this even existed, that there's basically like marketing and advertising agencies that work exclusively with nonprofits. I was like, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And we worked with one based out of Dallas called KMA Direct Communications. And I got to know like their CEO, and, he got to know me, and he said, yeah, look, kid, we've been doing direct mail for 35 years. I mean, that's how most nonprofits raise money. He's like, we've been really trying to figure out how to move into this digital space. Would you consider coming to Dallas and starting a digital fundraising division? I was like, well, I don't know fundraising. He's like, that's okay. I can teach you that. He's like, but we really think that you can help lead us into this brave new digital world. So we left. We were only at Core Ridge for about 18 months.
Right.
And my wife was pregnant again, 8 months with our third. So now we had like a 3-year-old, a 16-month-old, and my wife was 8 months pregnant.
You got a basketball team.
Yeah. And I mean, talk about like a brave woman. I mean, like who moves 8 months into their pregnancy, has to get a new doctor, figure all that stuff out. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got to Dallas, and I went to work for this company called KMA Direct Communications. And I thought I would love the job and hate Dallas. I ended up loving Dallas and like really not liking the job. I mean, they had hired a bunch of executives at the same time. We're all stepping all over each other. It was just really messy. And about 6 months in, I was like, I've had it. I'm going to go start my own gig. And, I talked to all of my counselors and advisors, and everyone's like, yes, of course, you're an entrepreneur. This totally makes sense. It's a good move. I was very open with the leadership of KMA. I said, hey, guys, I don't think it's a fit. They said, we totally get it. Look, we'll give you a soft landing. We'll kind of contract back with you for a period of time. And, that will help your transition and help us as well. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I had a conversation with my brother, and my brother and I we're never like super close growing up, but we're brothers, right? And so I called him and I was telling him about my plans and stuff. He's like, that's really cool, man. But can I ask you a question? I mean, are you ever really content? It just seems like you're always angling for the bigger, better deal for Tim.
He's seen you moving around a lot. Yeah.
It just like cut right through me, right? So it was. I think God like really used that to expose to me that there was something else going on, right? Because we couldn't even afford to get into the housing market in South Florida. When we moved to Dallas, we bought this beautiful house. It was the nicest house I've ever lived in, but our house wasn't nice enough, right? We looked around and like, our cars weren't nice enough. So of course my job wasn't nice enough, right? So what it was a contentment issue. And I remember thinking, like, after that conversation with my brother, I said, look, I can either chase this for the rest of my life, right? Or I can suck it up and say, okay, God, you put me here. Doesn't feel good right now, right? But I'm gonna go all in and just trust that you have me where you want me. So I go back, hat in hand, to the leadership of KMA. I said, hey guys, I've had a change of heart. I really want to stick this out. And they said, great, it's awesome. And Brant, looking back on it now, it was like a light switch moment.
Yeah.
Because like after I committed, like, I mean, just like God like blessed everything that I did. I mean, we had some incredible opportunities with some very high profile clients. And it was like being strapped to a jetpack. I was learning so much. I was like, being established as this like digital fundraising like wizard. And I got to lead the pitch. So they were building the George W. Bush Presidential Library here in Dallas on the SMU campus. And it was a $300 million capital campaign. And I led the pitch for our agency to get all, and we won all the digital work. I mean, I had George Bush and Laura Bush, they're 2 Secret Service agents, and like they listened to me talk for 30 minutes. How cool is that, right?
Yeah,
and so
fantastic.
Just I would have missed all those things if I had, just kind of acted on my feelings, not on, what was reality. So that was a great experience.
Yeah, cool. And so, and that was with Pursuant then, or that was prior to?
So that was KMA, and about
KMA. Okay.
And about 2.5 years in, KMA was acquired by the Pursuant Group, which is another agency.
Got it. So that was the next transition.
That's right. Yeah. And I was there for probably another, I guess, 18 months or so. And at that point, I had really become obsessed, starting at my time at KMA, and then also when I was at Pursuant, just how do we optimize digital fundraising, right? So like, how do we really start to bring over some of the things that I was learning about and had been exposed to in the for-profit space of conversion rate optimization and decision science and behavioral economics? How do we actually like bring some of that science to the art of fundraising?
Right.
And I'd go to all these conferences, and I remember this one conference in particular I went to, and I'm like, okay, I'll go brush up on some skills because I'm the gifted one. And in the first 15 minutes, I was just totally blown away by this whole idea of like really thinking about your marketing from the perspective of your customer, like basically like inverting your perspective and trying to look at things like through the eyes of the customer.
Right.
And then the cool thing about the web is it's the greatest behavioral laboratory that's ever existed. So you can test everything in real time and be able to get the answers back. And, being a consultant all of my life, everybody looks at you like you have all the answers. And we know deep down inside that we don't, right?
Right.
And so when I discovered testing, I was like, man, this could be a way for me to like finally just be free, right? And just be able to go and really figure out the answers by listening to my customer. So at that first conference, I remember I called my team. I said, guys, get ready, because when I get back on Monday, this is going to change the way we do everything. I was like, wait, forget Monday. We were at the time working with the George Bush Presidential Center. We were doing everything that anybody would do if you're trying to acquire donors online. We're doing social media advertising. We're doing search engine marketing. We were doing email list rental. And that very day, we had an email going out to a list of 200,000 subscribers. And the purpose of the email is to try to get new members for the center, right? And I said, guys, give me about 30 minutes. I'm going to see if I can come up with like a new treatment, a new recipe for this email that we had been sending for months and months and months, and it was working really well. And so, I'm trying to like apply the things I'm learning, and at the same time, try not to break something that was working really well. So I only made one change to the email. It was to the very last sentence of the email. Now, if you read like, marketing best practice guides, they say that only 18% of people read to the end of the email. So how could making one tiny little change make a significant difference? But nonetheless, we decided to run the test. 100,000 people randomly got version A, 100,000 people got version B, which is the new treatment. And that one change produced 139% increase in click-through and a 42% increase in revenue. And I was like, at that moment, I was hooked. I was like, this is awesome. I want to do this for the rest of my life.
All right. Now you're keeping me in suspense. What was the line?
Okay. Everybody always asks. So it was the call to action. So it was the very last sentence of the email. And the original read, please stand with President and Mrs. Bush by making a tax-deductible gift now. I mean, sounds like a typical ask any nonprofit would make, right?
Yeah, right.
The optimized version said, please stand with President and Mrs. Bush by becoming a charter member of the George Bush Presidential Center, which conveys a stronger value proposition. What's more appealing, right?
Absolutely.
And that was the cool thing, is just like, making small little changes can make all the difference in the world. I mean, what a great discovery. And honestly, it was great to have that first experiment like be such a success, because sometimes they don't work, right? And sometimes you get a red arrow. And the cool thing about that, though, is that if you design your tests appropriately, every single experiment can translate into learnings, and the learnings are what lead to breakthroughs.
That's awesome. Yeah. So NextAfter is where you are now, and that was founded, a little over 8 years ago, almost 9 years now. What was the motivation behind that? And tell me about your transition from Pursuant to NextAfter.
So most of the agencies in our space, the nonprofit fundraising agencies, they've all started off as direct mail companies, right? So which means their entire business model kind of really revolves around this big, slow moving machine of direct mail. Digital moves at a completely different pace, right? And so what they would do is they would add on, like, they'd bolt on a digital division to this kind of like legacy direct mail company. And I just saw that was very limiting as a business model. And so really the idea for NextAfter was like, what if we could just like focus exclusively on digital fundraising, and even more specifically, like use the web as a laboratory and create like this company that has this constant perpetual learning machine on the front end, right? That's constantly churning out like new ideas and testing them, bringing them to market, figuring out what works, so that you can kind of like stay riding that wave of what's on the bleeding edge of things. And so that's really what NextAfter is today. We're three things. We're a fundraising research lab. Mm-hmm. We're a training institute, and we're consultancy. And each of those three different pillars kind of supports what I think is, our unique value proposition.
And now, did you found that with some other believers or folks that you knew from your advertising past?
So
combination of both.
yeah. I mean, I left first, so I left Pursuant, but I had met a couple of guys that I really kind of like really gelled with, and like we were on this voyage together, just trying to figure out how to optimize digital fundraising. But I left first, and I for the first year, what I thought NextAfter was going to be was like a kind of like a consultant to the consultant. So my early clients were like other agencies, technology companies, or other folks that actually served the nonprofit directly. And that was okay. I mean, it was a great transition because I had like these monthly retainers and very steady income, and so it was kind of cool. And what I thought I was going to do was help them to develop their own in-house digital fundraising optimization capabilities, but that's not what they wanted. What they really liked about what I had to bring to the table was something shiny and honestly quite sexy, right? And so I ended up really becoming an outsourced kind of like business development guy.
So in other words, they weren't so interested in learning how to fish. They really wanted you to fish for them.
They wanted me to go reel in the big fish for them, right? And so I did that for about a year, and I was like, man, this is not really what I was hoping it could be. And the problem too would be I would go and kind of like lead the pitch, and everyone get excited. They'd sign on the dotted line, and then the execution would be handed off to somebody else. I wasn't involved in that, and it wasn't. It wasn't being executed properly. I mean, great strategy without great execution is not worth the paper it's written on, right?
That's right.
So, so I was like, well, that's not going to work. And so I started working with nonprofits directly, and I had one client, and then got another client, and that was really interesting because I could control the entire experience. And in the beginning, it's when you're a single shingle, you do everything, right? So you go. You've got to do the business development, then you got to be like the person that runs the client engagement, and then also has to figure out the technician side of things to get all that stuff. I mean, so it just
send the bills and collect them as well, right?
Exactly. And so I was like, I really do want a business partner. I think that would be great. And so there was a guy named Jeff Giddens who I met at Pursuant, and he actually took over my job when I left. And I had like a 12-month non-compete, so I couldn't even talk to him. Or non-solicitation. So I waited till that ended, and I called him on like the day it expired. I was like, hey, Jeff. I was like, what do you think about this thing over here? He's like, I thought you would never ask. And so he came over and he joined me as a partner. And then about 6 months in, both Jeff and I were kind of more on the kind of client engagement side. I'd probably lean a little bit more towards the business development side. He's probably more on like the managing the day-to-day operations of clients. But neither one of us was a technician. And we knew one guy that we had worked with over there named Kevin Peters, who was just an absolute brilliant technician. And so Kevin then joined our team about 6 months later and came on as a partner. And so and then about 2 years later, our fourth partner, Paul Clough, came over, who brings the whole kind of operations, finance, accounting, legal. He brings all that kind of stuff that none of us really want to mess with. So
and how many employees today, and what's your scope of work?
Yeah, we have 27 employees, 35 clients across North America. And the way that we're organized now, again, we've got our client service division is the largest part of our company. And then we have a media buying team. We've got a whole data analytics team. And then we've got our institute team, which is really focused on the training and ongoing research side of things.
So if you take a look at some of your early experiences, obviously you've been both the entrepreneur as well as worked for larger companies. What are some of the lessons you've learned, and have you applied those at NextAfter?
Well, I think the first one came before I even started NextAfter, which is just, you can't make decisions based on how you feel, right? I mean, because our feelings are fleeting. They change by the minute sometimes, right?
Right.
And if we make decisions based on our feelings, then we're not making decisions based on like what's truth and what's reality. And so I have to constantly go back and, I mean, any leader has to be constantly self-monitoring and be self-aware and just, understand that, the CEO doesn't get to have a bad hair day, right? I mean, you've got to suck it up and just, sometimes lead in spite of how you feel. And yeah, just like anyone else, I'm incredibly insecure. I mean, like, honestly, like I speak at probably 20, 30 conferences a year, and I love it. It's so fun. I love being on stage, and I love having a captive audience. But we run our own conference every year where we have, probably between 700 and 900 people that come from the nonprofit space.
Right.
And not a lot of people know this, but like the night before that conference is like the darkest time of my year. Like,
really?
Because I've got like all of my staff there, all of our clients there, every person in the industry that knows me is there, and it's terrifying. And I feel like I have to constantly
stage fright, or what's it
just,
really?
I feel like an imposter. You just go through all these emotions. I feel like I have to constantly like reinvent myself, and I put all this pressure on myself, and it's just like, I mean, that's the time where I just have to like, fall on my knees and like, God, you're gonna have to carry me because I'm toast, Now,
are your other co-founders believers, and is your organization, would you consider it faith-based in how you, kind of manage and run the organization?
Yeah, they are. They are believers, which is awesome. We're all involved in C12, which is great.
Which is how we met, by the way.
That's right. That's right.
We'll be seeing each other. We haven't met yet, but we'll be seeing each other at Current 21, where I believe you'll be speaking.
That's right.
The next big conference.
We're going to talk about content marketing and lead gen, which should be pretty fun.
Awesome.
But yeah, no, we and the cool thing too, Brant, is like we get to serve a lot of really wonderful ministries. So probably about 60% of our clients are faith-based nonprofit organizations.
Nice.
So we work with Dallas Theological Seminary, Compassion International, Focus on the Family. I'm heading to Luther Seminary tomorrow to go give a presentation. So like, we get to work with some wonderful organizations that are doing some incredible kingdom work. And the neat thing about that is that the more that we can decode what works in fundraising, the more we can kind of focus on our mission and like get that information, that data into the hands of these people that are raising funds, then the more kingdom impact that can happen.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So it's pretty cool.
Well, you're building a company culture along with building a company. What does that look like, as you continue to grow, add new employees, obviously share who you are with your clients as well as your other stakeholders?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know too many people that like could develop a business plan and day one get it all right. But like over time, what has emerged for us is like I think a compelling vision, right? So like our mission is to decode what works in fundraising, get into the hands of as many fundraisers as possible so that we can achieve our vision, which is this: to unleash the most generous generation in the history of the world. And like that just like captivates my imagination. That's something I can give my life to for the next 30, 40 years.
Right.
And what's cool about that is like we may not be a nonprofit organization, but we're very much a cause-based organization ourselves.
Sure.
And the neat thing is like every single one of our clients, they're in the trenches every day trying to generate, resources for their cause, right, for their ministry. But they also get to unite to this other cause, which is this cause of generosity. And the cool thing about that is like I feel like we get to be like a heavenly investment banker, because if you think about it, like there's only one way that you can take the wealth from this world into the next world, and that's by investing into things that are going to last forever. And so, that's why it's such a wonderful, wonderful like ministry. And so like out of that vision and mission, we've got 8 core values. Probably the most, popular one is this idea of like erring on the side of generosity, right? Which means that like when we're faced with a decision, right, and we've had this value guide a lot of very difficult decisions. But like when it comes time to make a decision, we always want to make sure that we can err on the side of generosity. And so we think about like, how can we engineer that into the culture of our organization? So, we do things like, we have a profit sharing pool. We give away 10% of our profits. We pay for all of our employees' health coverage and fund their HSA account. And like we provide lunch every day. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, it's like every single day we sit down together as a team and we break bread. With 27 employees, that's not a small expense, but it's such a great investment in just developing that culture, because you get to know people on a more, I guess, personal level.
Now, are you recruiting people from the nonprofit world, or are they more marketing executives or client services folks? What does that look like when you're bringing people in when you're a profit organization serving the nonprofit world?
Yeah, they come from both spaces. Mm-hmm. So I'd say probably 60% of our staff have worked at nonprofit organizations, and then another 40% come from the for-profit space.
Yep.
And it's, as you know, it's really hard to attract and retain like really good talent.
Right.
And being a small company for the number of employees we have or number of clients we have, I mean, we need to have like all-star performers in every single role. And we've really worked on trying to figure out like, okay, how do we codify our mindset and our culture and our values, and how do we actually screen that on the front end? And I mean, this is your business, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is no easy task. And honestly, the biggest challenge we face today is building capacity, right? Because there's so much opportunity and so much demand for the things that we can provide, and we have to figure out a way to kind of scale up along with the opportunity.
Well, to double click on that, what do you personally look for when you're, making bets on people you invest in and hire?
Yeah, I think what I'm looking for is somebody that is compelled by the mission and vision that we've laid out. So, by the time I get to interview people, like they've already kind of like checked all the boxes. They've got like the right kind of skills, and they've got probably the right personality for the specific role. And what I want to see is like, are you excited about what we're building? And do you see yourself being able to kind of contribute to this thing that's way bigger than any one of us, right? And so that's what I kind of like look for, is just, that I guess affinity for the mission.
Yeah. Are there specific interview questions that you use, particularly with someone that maybe is a level or two below you in the organization that's coming in, but, that hiring manager wants you to, get a chance to meet with them? What do you zero in on? What are the specific questions you ask? What are the areas you probe?
I usually start by just saying, I want to hear your story. I mean, tell me about you. I want to understand like how you got to this specific place, right? I mean, like, and just hear them, share the journey that, God has taken them through. I mean, that's always like really exciting to me. I know you love that too. That's why you do this, right?
Absolutely. No, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. And hearing that story sometimes can also lead to new areas of exploration. Do you find that as well, that you'll, try to get into some of their personal issues and not personal issues, but their passion issues, I guess, more in terms of what the kind of things that they've done in the past? Is that what you try to look for, or are you looking more for qualifications and skills? Where do you kind of zero in on when you're having that type of an interview?
Yeah, I mean, when they start to tell about their journey, then I'll kind of like ask more kind of behavioral type of questions, try to understand, tell me a time when, you had to deal with a very difficult like coworker, right? I mean, like how do you handle that? What do you do? And I'm trying to like see like, are they answering in a way that kind of coordinates with what our values are
culturally
as a company.
aligned.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's true. It's such a hard thing to do. As you know, I do that for a living, but I'll tell you, if anyone struggles with that, most of my clients have that. It's, how do you really kind of get at those types of questions that really can assure you that person is culturally aligned? Because it's hard. And in a 20-minute interview situation or even an hour situation, it's hard to kind of get at that. Well, Tim, you've been very generous with your time, but we've got a couple other questions before we wrap up today. There's obviously a lot of speculation about what the world looks like, post-COVID, or if we will ever be post-COVID, who knows with vaccines and all that. What changes do you see, ahead, particularly as it relates to your clients and the nonprofit industry, particularly those that are faith-based?
Well, one thing that's happened is that every single nonprofit has been given a violent shove into digital transformation. And that's been actually a very positive thing, especially for us. In many cases, we've been fighting against inertia, right? So nonprofits tend to be, 6 to 10 years behind the curve on a lot of things. And they're also very risk averse. They don't like to try new things, and for good reason. They're trying to steward their donors' dollars, right?
Sure.
So that's a very good thing. But at the same time, when you don't try new things, if you don't take calculated risks, you're failing to assess the biggest risk of all, which is the risk of assuming that things are going to continue to work as they did 20 years ago, and that's not the world we live in today. So we've been tracking since the middle of March. We've been tracking 162 nonprofit organizations across 12 verticals. Every single communication that they've sent during that time, we've been tracking all that stuff. And what we're seeing is that nonprofits are leaning much more into digital communication than they ever have before COVID. Right. And what's also positive, we've also been tracking the donor activity as it relates to that communication. And what we're seeing is that digital revenue is actually up 30% year over year compared to 2019.
Wow.
And it's been progressively growing. So I think that, what we're going to see is that digital is going to become more of I think an area of focus for many organizations, as opposed to being like just this bolted on sideshow. It's going to really take a leading role.
Well, it does make sense too, Tim, because when you think about it, when I think of nonprofits, and I've been on a couple of boards and certainly have contributed in the past, it's usually always about community, and it's about getting together and events and so forth. And, you just can't do those anymore. Right? Or at least not during this period of time. So do you think digital has kind of moved into more of that realm where, we're meeting there digitally and encouraging people to participate in that manner versus maybe attending, a board meeting or a presentation or, a large nonprofit event in the past? Are you seeing that as well?
Well, for sure. And I mean, like, everybody has been given a master's level course on how to use Zoom, right? So like,
right.
I mean, a lot of donor conversations that used to have to be, face to face, and you have to get on an airplane. I mean, like, just think of how inefficient that is. I mean, to go fly around the country and try to meet every single one of your donors, it's hard. But like, now all of those major donors who run companies, like, they've all had to get used to these virtual meetings. So it's not a unfun experience unsavory experience as it has been in the past to do these virtual meetings.
Well, and they're much more accessible now.
That's right. That's right.
And certainly much more willing. So
you're right, because they're not getting on planes or getting on bills, right? Everyone's strapped into their desk. That's right. It's a good point.
Accept an invitation. Well, Tim, you've been very generous with your time. One last question, and that would be, what career and life advice would you give to someone who, has their eyes on their own corner office, or perhaps like yourself, wants to be an entrepreneur and really, fulfill his or her passion?
I mean, I can't talk enough about the importance of having mentors in your life. I mean, I've had several mentors. I constantly seek them out and find people that have maybe a little bit more gray hair than I have, that have been there, that have done that, and, just spending time with them. I mean, I still, my boss from KMA, I still meet with him once a month. We have lunch. And he's just such a great advisor and counselor and leader. My C12 chair. I mean, another example of like a great mentor in my life. My dad, just having people that you can use as kind of a teacher, a sounding board, somebody that kind of like that will give you the hard, unvarnished truth. I mean, that's so incredibly valuable to anybody that wants to do anything. And then the second thing I would say is just like, stick with it, right? So like, anybody that I've ever met that's been successful has not hopped from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, right? So like, they stick it out even when things are tough, and just commit to it. Find something that can captivate your imagination and just go for it.
Yeah, makes so much sense. Tim Kachuriak, CEO and founder and Chief Innovation and Optimization Officer of NextAfter, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.